The kind of media studies as it is defined here is kind of based on also on the Wikipedia definition of media studies as something that is really rooted in arts and humanities, and so it's not it's a different let's say intellectual trajectory from let's say communications, which always had a relationship to public relations, to the newspapers, or to social science approaches going back to the late 19th century, but also in my field in Amsterdam, very much it came out of mass psychology. So the mass communication and mass psychology have a direct relationship in many places. That has been cut off because mass psychology as a separate discipline disappeared somewhere in the late 70s or early 80s. That's when it all the programs have kind of stopped and were transferred into or migrated into the larger communication studies departments. So it's kind of a question of where we have to position the theory and the theory activities, where and also where we can expect maybe of new, surprising, and fresh research to come up. And that's for me the other coin of the question. The one is to say goodbye to certain forced coalitions that people have to were forced to operate in. But the other is, of course, the new opportunities that are out there. In this text, I am discussing not only the problems that we've been discussing here, in a desperate attempt to gain scientific recognition for it, Lacan and Foucault are applied to regardless which media product. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if she's on Twitter.
That is no, but then it's that's not the issue. The issue is for you to.
You can get her on there.
Yeah. But there is also, of course, the issue that. And so what I also pointed at that there is no Geburtsmythos, so it means that there's no birth myth in media studies, which I think is a serious problem. So we cannot even talk about degeneration in a serious way, because where is the starting point? The starting point often is a bureaucratic merger, or something like that. So there is no, unlike cultural studies, which kind of emerged from something, or gender studies for that matter, or feminist studies, who clearly know where they're coming from, know why they're there, who were born out of a real existing social fight, But unfortunately, this is simply not the case with media studies. Then I think there is a demise of theory in general in society, and so the kind of the influence that, for instance, postmodernist theory in the 80s and 90s still had on something like contemporary art completely is missing these days. That's just not the case anymore, and I applied that also to our field in general, that because of this forced marriage, new media itself has kind of stopped producing canonical texts itself. So looking back at the theory production of the last 10 years, there is not much that I could think of as something that is really influential, or that I think that my students these days that I have in my program should absolutely read. I couldn't think of anything much. Maybe with the acceptance then of Manovich's book, Language of New Media, but then I associate that very much to the 90s, and it's kind of an end point of 90s theory production. And that book also was put together in the 90s. All of its examples. Yeah, all of its examples and its influences and so on. Then I go a little bit into the question of how film theory and new media relates or not relates. I find it quite interesting here in the setup of the European Graduate School that we have the two tracks, and that that it kind of almost mimics this situation that I find myself in, and many people find themselves in, where there is this kind of competition or relation, not relation between the two.
What's your take on Alexander Galloway?
Yeah, I don't know his work so well. I know him just as a young guy who worked at Rhizome. I thought I find his thing on his chapter in his book Protocol. I still find that really useful, and we all read that in class. I cannot recommend the whole book because I think the whole book is a bit. It should have been a whole book just about that idea, and the book is more like a PhD with all sorts of different other chapters of non-related topics. Also interesting topics, but I think he should, and I've invited him to write another book just only about protocol, because I think it is not well developed yet. It should be further developed, because we really need more thinking about what standards and protocols are. And he rightly points at the fact that internet protocols are incredibly essential.
Fundamental.
Yeah.
And fundamental.
Fundamental. Yeah. So I find that contribution, is really good. But then he wrote a book about computer games, and I'm not playing computer games, so I just the exploit. I sort of found that too difficult I couldn't really grasp the.
Lev Manovich is online.
Okay.
Sure.
Yes. Hey, yeah.
But we have no sound yet.
No,
Wait,
no sound yet.
Wait.
You see? Yeah. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, I see. Now it works. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Okay. Hey, welcome. This is the very last hour of 3 days. We've been going through a lot of issues, mainly concerning Web 2.0. We looked at Natalie's film on the YouTube, the road movie.
Okay.
We looked at a documentary about Flickr, and we looked at the film I produced with Mieke Gerritsen, that film.